or have I heard of skinwalkers or mimics? And in the question, it was, they are scary as expletive. Um, yes, I have. Now, this is part of clearing galactic programming and trauma with whether extraterrestrials, interdimensionals, fairies, all that. Fearful stories sell. Story of me sitting with Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whichever terms you wish to use. They prefer Sasquatch. I've only met one out of the tons that I've met that actually likes to be called Bigfoot. It's just a side note. But the stories that sell are the ones that are aggressive in nature, typically from my experience of hearing these stories, because a human did something first. People leave that part out. The human did something first almost every single time before the being got aggressive with them. Uh, and this is why, a lot of these stories are hunters, are people doing things like you'll hear them going parking in the middle of the wilderness, blaring their radios, doing things that are not necessarily the most harmonious for nature. So then they have a fearful encounter, usually because they don't understand the encounter. And so that story sells. Same with the skinwalkers and mimics. Now, do they exist? Yes, they exist. Are they as common and worrisome as people think? No, that's just fearful storytelling. You have documentaries now, you have Netflix, you have Hulu and all these other platforms releasing these documentaries about these horror stories, about these situations with beings that people suspect, and still, I've watched some of them, still they have no idea what's going on because they aren't able to comprehend what's actually going on. And that's part of the problem. A lot of these fearful stories that people are telling are simply misunderstood. That's it. Misunderstood. I have heard people say, do not go into the desert, do not go into the wilderness or the mountains by yourself. There's XYZ out there. I've been out here so often, I've rarely seen anything that made me nervous that was not of our normal world. The only things that have been my friends. The things that have shown up have been the galactics. A galactic shows up, it's going to send fear through you. I cannot stress enough how much fear you will experience when galactics and extraterrestrials and Sasquatches and all these beings show up and you have not cleared your traumas, your fears. You will show up and you will run, they will show up and you will run the other direction. I watched a video from, I think it was Bashar recently, who said many of the civilizations have tried to show up, and every time they give people a date and time and they say, hey, we'll be there, they bring down their ship and then the people run because there's so much fear that is unhealed within them, so much fear of these beings. Stories of fear sell, stories of peace do not. Look at the books that we sell, look at the movies that sell, look at the highest grossing movies, the books that do the best. They all have concepts of fear that sell. So that permeates the culture. That goes into the mythologies. Those beings do exist, mimics and skinwalkers. They do exist. They are not as prevalent as people think. They are not as responsible for things as people think. That's also a misunderstanding, that it's all of them doing different things in different areas. It's not all them. There's a lot of things going on when I'm talking about like missing people and all this other stuff. The other thing is, when you shift your reality, you shift yourself out of their reality space. When you exist in fear, you basically are in a space of attracting stuff like that. So if you go into the woods and you're just deeply afraid something bad is going to happen, you're going to attract that to you, or an experience like that to you that puts you into a fearful state that maybe you just don't understand, but you're creating more fearful experience for yourself. Beings who live in those spaces, who thrive on those energies, are in those spaces. When you don't, they're repelled. The reality is repelled. They can't get in. And your bubble of reality is way up here. They're way down here. You're not even touching. But here's the key thing. There is so much fear behind the idea of who they are because of the programming, because of the storytelling, even though it's like one instance here, a couple instances over here, over thousands of years, and uh, millions and millions of people. But there's so much fear around them because primarily people don't like the idea of things that don't look like themselves. Here's the thing. If you're a mimic, it is in your authentic nature to mimic other people. You are living in your truth. If you are a mimic, you are living in your truth to mimic other things. People fear that because they feel it's not truthful, and they feel that it is deceptive, and they feel that it is uh, uh, trickery and all this other stuff. People feel those things because they fear the potential of what that being is. Most of you have probably passed a mimic in your life, have probably walked past one on the road, in the streets, and never even known it. There are beings all around us from other worlds, from other dimensions, who can shift what they look like. Fairies who cross over, who have a more human form, are able to shift what they look like, are able to mimic things, are able to do other things. You've probably passed one, never even known it. You're still here. You're still healthy. You're still living life. You're still doing your thing. They didn't affect you. Most of the beings who are mimics, shapeshifters, and that are not out to get you. Most of them. It is your job to reduce fear of them, to reduce the fear, so that when you do have experiences, when you do invite energy in, you are inviting benevolent energy. You are not going into the wilderness deeply afraid that something bad has happened. You will attract something bad. You are not going into the desert being deeply afraid of these stories based on these documentaries where those people don't even understand what's going on for the most part. In those documentaries, they're just fear generators. You're not going into the desert being like, oh my God, I'm in the desert, but I'm afraid of all this. You will invite negative experience. Doesn't mean you will invite one of them. It means you will invite negative experience to you of some kind. One of the things that is popping in my head is when I started doing this and traveling more and more and more, people were very afraid for me. Very, very afraid for me. You're going into the desert by yourself, the woods, all this. All these documentaries. I just saw one about somebody getting hurt or this or that, this and that. All kinds of fear mongering. And one of my friends was afraid for me. And they asked their guides and they said, you know, uh, do I need to worry about him? And they're like, no, he doesn't think that way. He doesn't believe that way. He doesn't feel that way. They said something of that nature. My reality is not in that reality of fear and negativity to draw that to me. Beings come to me all the time. I'm still here. I'm still here. There are people afraid of Sasquatch. I'm still sitting here. I'm still around here. Reduce the fear. That's the key. Understand the fear is a way to program you out of experience. Love you all. Grateful for each and every one of you.